Can I invite the chaplain, the Reverend Dr. Harriet Harris, to open the meeting with a moment of prayer, or indeed reflection.
Well, this is an opportunity for us to reflect on our common purpose as we come together this morning and to join in prayer for those who would like to do so. We give thanks for the opportunity to meet today and for all those on whose shoulders we stand who have made this university a house of fruitful study and endeavour. We ask for wisdom to follow all that is best in their example and for imagination to carve out our own paths. We ask for diligence and cheerfulness, for good courage and discernment as we play our part in shaping the university's future and its service in the world. Amen.
I'm told that you'll be interested to note that the meeting is a live webcast, so you'll be on TV. Behave yourselves. The first thing on our agenda is the results of the elections. And at the conclusion of the counting of votes on Thursday, the 13th of February, the following members are elected to the Business Committee to serve for a period of 4 years from the 1st of August 2014. And in alphabetical order, they are David James Robert Houston, Dorothy Turvey MacLeod, Philip John Courtney Maurer, Sarah Morgan, and Samuel Joseph Trett. So our best wishes to them all, and thanks to the 3 unsuccessful candidates. Thanks for your interest, and we hope you'll consider standing again at a future election. The second item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the meeting of the 22nd of June 2013, which are on pages 37 to 38 of Billet, which is within Edit. Does anyone have any objection to the minutes? No, in which case, can we take them as approved by assent? Yes, thank you. Do we have any matters arising from the minutes, other than those formally arising, of which there are none? No, in which case, does anyone have any other matters of pressing business arising from the minutes? No. In which case, I move to item 4, which is the convener of the Business Committee to present the report of the Business Committee. Charles.
Rector, Chancellor's Assessor, Vice-Chancellor, members of the General Council and guests. I'm pleased to present to you the report of the Business Committee for the last 6 months since our last half-yearly meeting in June 2013. I'm delighted to welcome here today formally your new General Council Assessor, Doreen Davidson, sitting in the row there. Doreen has served with distinction on the Business Committee for 3 years since 2010 and was the convener of the Finance and Services Standing Committee. She brought to bear her considerable experience of strategic human resources management in a large international organisation, and her expertise was welcomed by colleagues. I welcome also your new Business Committee members elected to serve until July 2016. These are John Clifford, Matt McPherson, Anne Patterson, who's previously been a member of the committee, Scott Peter and Ian Stevens. I hope that they will enjoy their time on your committee and contribute powerfully to our business on your behalf. Last year, Development and Alumni held their first alumni weekend to coincide with the last half-yearly meeting. Attendance at the half-yearly meeting held at the School of Veterinary Medicine out at Easterbush was very encouraging, with many attending from more distant parts of the country. We were educated and entertained by Professor David Argyle, and after lunch was a most interesting account of veterinary medicine developments worldwide from Dr. George Gunn from Novartis. The other weekend events included a reception hosted by the university, a ceilidh, and a barbecue again hosted by the university, and these were very well attended and reportedly good fun. Your committee recently received the annual report of the University of Edinburgh Development Trust to July 2012. This was very encouraging. It showed that the income to the Trust was stable at around £11 million, with very good support from legacies, and a particular contribution from our colleagues in the United States of £750,000. Highlights of the disbursement of those monies highlights also included a major gift from the Shirley Foundation for the Patrick Wild Centre for the Study of Autism and Related Diseases, and major support for the Centres of Study of Islam and of Sino-Japanese relations. And those three examples just show the enormous breadth of excellence in research at this particular university. Corporate donations had fallen slightly, but were outweighed by substantial private donations, and it's fascinating to see that 95% of the funds raised came from 5% of the donors. Members of the General Council can assist fundraising by providing introductions to potential donors through your extensive personal networks, and I encourage you to think about that, as well as the donations you give in a personal capacity. New information induction packs for business committee members and General Council assessors were assembled and published by your Constitutional Standing Committee, led by Mr. Gordon Cairns. Gordon and his committee are also examining the implications of constitutional change for the university, and we'll come to some conclusion about that later this year. Your Academic Standing Committee, led by Dr. Bruce Ritson, spent considerable time inquiring into the efforts being made by the university to improve the student experience. The university has made very considerable investments, and your Business Committee recognises that this is not a quick fix. It will take a number of years to settle down before these changes will be reflected in the NUS student survey results in future years. We're not hoping for a dramatic change. We're looking instead for steady improvement year after year. Your committee also inquired into the integration and support of international students, which are growing and important components of the university life, and we will continue both of these themes this year as they are of fundamental importance to the well-being of the university. Your Public Affairs Committee has worked with Development and Alumni and the Secretary to develop the new General Council website. Now, this is up and running now. I do hope you like the more modern, fresh look and feel, and also that you use some of the features such as the blogging facility. It's an excellent opportunity to get anything you like off your chest. The next half-yearly meeting, as you know, will be in Toronto. It's been discussed extensively and plans are now far advanced. As some of you may know, the Grand Prix F1 schedule meant that we could not go to Montreal as planned originally. But I do hope that as many as possible of you make the trip, and we are assured of a very warm welcome and likely very good weather by our alumni in Toronto and colleagues in the university there. We look forward also to working with colleagues in Development and Alumni on a new alumni engagement strategy, and I'm sure that will be widely consulted on within the General Council. Your Finance and Services Committee met recently with Mr. Phil McNaull, Director of Finance, who presented the annual report and accounts for 2012 to 13, available in the annual report you have today for this meeting, and shared his thoughts on the current and future financial prospects of the university. These were generally favourable, as I'm sure you will realise, and you will hear from the Principal shortly. The committee has also received an update on the estate strategy, and again, the recent building programme has been highly impressive, with a number of current and imminent projects which will benefit both the university and the city. General Council members had a private viewing at a particularly good festival exhibition this year in the Talbot Rice Gallery by the Korean artist Nam June Paik, a cutting-edge exhibition that contributes, as ever, to the cultural life of the university and the city. In early October, the university had a most successful week, perhaps the most successful week in recent memory. The new Chancellor, our Chancellor, visited for 3 days, opening some magnificent new facilities and hosting a dinner at the Palace of Holyrood House for the Chancellor's Award winners, and presiding at a celebration of excellence where 3 honorary degrees and a fellowship were awarded to outstanding people. The university builds communities of support in this way and identifies people who can be inspirational to all of us, and it's a great honour and pleasure to be fully involved on your behalf in these programmes. To cap off an outstanding year for the university, the Nobel Prize for Physics was awarded, as you will all know, to Professor Peter Higgs. But this is the third Nobel Prize in Physics that has been awarded to this university, a rare achievement. Lastly, I'd just like to draw your attention to an event on Wednesday, February the 26th, and do hope you'll come along to a seminar entitled Can the University Afford to Have Values? This is a joint effort with the General Council, the Chaplaincy and the Students' Association, and we would warmly welcome as many of you as possible to that event. That concludes the report of the Business Committee.
Thank you, Charles. And I can now open the floor for questions and comments from members. Gentleman at the back. Do we have a microphone? If you can just wait for the microphone. Thanks.
I was a little concerned about the blogging facility. It was suggested that you could get anything you liked off your chest. I wondered if there was an editor here, because there could be slight dangers if inappropriate material got put up.
Yes, I think anything off your chest within reason were the words that our convener failed to... and just to reassure you that it is moderated and inappropriate comments will not be allowed to...
You're foiled. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? No, in which case, can we approve the report from the convener? Yes, excellent. And I can then move on to agenda item 5, which is the dates of the next General Council meetings and the dates by which motion should be received. Secretary.
Thank you. The next half-yearly meeting, as you heard, will take place on Saturday, the 21st of June in the University of Toronto. Any motions for discussions at that meeting should be received in the General Council office by the 31st of March 2014. The following statutory half-yearly meeting will be held on Saturday, the 14th of February 2015 in Old College, and any motions for discussion at that meeting should be received in the General Council office by the 26th of November 2014. And if I may, I'll just move on to item 6, which is notification of forthcoming elections. There will be an election for 2 General Council Court Assessors next February and 5 members of the Business Committee, as usual. Nominations on forms available either from the General Council office or from the website should be received by the General Council office by the 26th of November this year, 2014. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm delighted to move on to item 7, which is the address by the Principal, Professor Timothy O'Shea, to the General Council of the annual report of the University. There will follow opportunity for questions and comments. Principal.
Rector, Convener of the General Council Business Committee, Chancellor's Assessor, Sheriff Principal Bowen, Lord Cameron, members of the General Council, colleagues. Just a tremendous pleasure to be with you again and to present the report. And can I start by endorsing the excellent report of the convener of the Business Committee. I would endorse everything he's said. I would draw particular attention to the tremendous contributions we are getting from the Princess Royal, the Chancellor elected by the General Council, and in this coming week we will have a number of events that she will preside at. But we had, as your convener said, an absolutely brilliant week in October, where the Chancellor was deeply engaged in the life of the university. I would also endorse his comment on the festivals. The Edinburgh festivals are doing brilliantly. The Fringe had 2,781 shows, sold about 2 million tickets, and about 1 million of those tickets were for events in our premises. And there was a whole range of high-quality events, but also a growing relationship with the International Festival, as per the brilliant exhibit at the Talbot Rice. And so we are seeing the university, obviously the host and the originator of the Fringe, the world's largest arts festival. The closest to it is the Adelaide Festival, which is about 2/3 of a million. whereas we are three times bigger. But very strong engagement with the International Festival, particularly in visual art and some drama. Tremendously strong engagement with the International Book Festival, where, of course, we give the James Tate Black Prizes. And now in a partnership with the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland and Scottish Opera, a brilliant new venue out at Murray House, Patterson's Land, which was described in the roundup on the Fringe as the Waitrose of fringe venues. And had superb, and I'll just digress for a moment because it's an ambition, and I was so pleased to see this. One of the performances I went to see was some modern dance called Colours. It was danced by 8 of our Murray House students, and at the end they were absolutely delighted. The choreography had come from students at the Royal Conservatoire. The costumes had come from fashion students doing the Masters in Fashion for Performance at Edinburgh College of Art. The music had been composed by students from our Reed School of Music, music composition, and the music was played by a brilliant little orchestra from the Royal Conservatoire. So essentially 5 different master's courses, 3 of ours, 2 from the Royal Conservatoire, all reached a wonderful public audience. And it was, so we're seeing, so it's tremendous, not just economic benefits and the appreciation of the city, but tremendous benefits in development. And the BBC had pop-up studios where for the first time from those studios, every single BBC channel had covered the festival, and 300 of the interns there were our students who were being paid to run around with clipboards and give the sort of instructions that people do in BBC studios. So very, very good. So let me now move on to the annual report. It's a beautiful document, and I really would want to commend Dr. Ian Conn, the head director of communications and marketing, and his colleagues. They produced a document that I'm immensely proud of, which I will be sending to senior politicians in Edinburgh, in London, in Brussels, and so on. Lovely document. Do read it. It always has a wonderful front cover. This year the front cover is our beautiful new vet school at Easter Bush. If you haven't been out to see it, do go out. You'll be amazed to see such a beautiful teaching facility on one side of the road, and then the new beautiful Roslin Institute facilities on the other side of the road. My normal custom with this report, which I shall follow this morning, is to work from the back. In the original discussions about this document, we put the boring bits at the back, the money and the numbers, and we put the attractive bits at the front, the pictures and the stories in the larger type. But in terms of a sort of an official report, it actually makes a bit more sense for me to work from the back. So I will start with Appendix 4. Appendix 4 shows that in terms of research contracts, so these are grants that we bid for competitively, the university secured in the last financial year grants to the value of £300 million. That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary for any university. The year before we had 250 million and we were amazed. The year before that we had 210 million and we were at 210 million, one of the biggest beasts in the sector. That is an extraordinary achievement. It's made up of about 1,000 different grants. Obviously some very big grants. I think the largest is 55 million, and some very small grants where there would be grants of the order of 5,000 or 10,000 pounds, but each one fought for in competition. Slightly more than half that comes from the UK research councils, so we're competing directly with Oxford and Cambridge and Imperial and UCL to get that money, but 175 million there comes from the UK research councils. 30 million comes from the European Union. Now I'm just back from Brussels, just directly back. The European Union has announced Horizon 2020. That's an expenditure planned up to 2020 of just under 80 billion euros. To date, we have been securing about 3.9, about just under 4% of the EU funds. The EU research funds are going up dramatically, particularly in areas like healthy aging, where we are able to mount very strong interdisciplinary research. And I was delighted meeting with some of the Director Generals of the Commission to see the very high regard that your university has held. So that 30 million you see there, that's a starter. That's a starter for a much larger sum in the future. And then from the UK charities, there's a very healthy 35 million. And the convener told you about the individual gifts that were recorded from donors. Those are very important, but we have to think of that 35 million from the charities in the same vein as alongside that. One of the things I would encourage you to do is to look at Appendix 4 and notice the very broad base from which we're getting support. And that includes the US-based institutions, includes the United Nations. What the report doesn't tell you, because it would be a bit fiddly, but you should know, is that we operate also on very high success rates. There are universities that are pleased if 1 in 10 of their grant applications are successful. We expect to get about a quarter successful. In some domains, we're hitting as high as 40%. And every single one of these grants is fought for. And we are increasingly, one of the other things that is interesting is that the amount of money has gone up quite dramatically over the last few years, but the number of grants hasn't. So what's been happening? And what's been happening is that we are increasingly putting in larger and more ambitious applications and continuing to be successful. So these are all incredibly good omens for the future. And it means we are now mounting really big grants in areas like world health, in aging, in the environment, in the use of global data. So that's Appendix 4. Appendix 3 is on benefactions, and I should thank many of you in this room for your personal support of the university. Again, the observation I made is we have a broad base of support in the university, and that double-page spread on benefactions shows you that very, very clearly. It also shows you the Carlisle Circle, and that's very important. That's more than 1,200 individuals now who have made long-term provision to support their university. And that has a tremendous ongoing impact for us. If we then move to Appendix 2, you see student numbers, steady growth. Many of you will be a little surprised, perhaps, to find that we now have almost 33,000 students in the period reported. There'll be more this year. About 2/3 of those are undergraduate. It's a fairly normal mix. Also, for a research-intensive university, we might want a slightly higher proportion postgraduate. What is very distinctive about us is that we are 40% international. 40% of us, and that's the old-fashioned notion of international. That is to say, 40% of our students come from outside the United Kingdom. That is very surprising. For the whole of the 20th century, we were 19% international by that definition. So we've seen a steady change in this century of basically of 2% a year. We started this century on around 19%. We're now at 40%. It gives us tremendous strength, gives us the partner, particularly when those are international PhD students, these are our research partners of the future. They will get their doctorates with us, they will go back to Beijing or Los Angeles or Berlin or Frankfurt. And but they will stay connected. And then as we work on these major world research enterprises concerned with the environment, concerned with healthy aging, then we have our partner network. So it's a very important thing for the long term. And if you look, as you'll all be aware, we got the surprising news that we have been steadily doing well in the different world league tables. QS ranked us as 17th. That is a tremendous achievement. That is quite extraordinary to be ranked. There are 20,000 universities in the world. So if you've got a country which has got 1/10 of 1% of the world's population, you'd be jolly pleased if you had a university in the top 200. To have a university in the top 20 it is quite startling. It's very good. And if you look at us and you compare us with the other universities that are in the world top 100, you'll notice two things very sharply about us. You will notice, I mean, I will come on to our turnover in a bit, but our turnover is about 750 million, about 3/4 of a UK billion. You will notice that compared to the universities we are competing with, that is very small. That is not a lot of money. I mean, in Scotland, 3/4 of a billion a year seems like a lot of money. If you're talking to the University of Texas or the University of Wisconsin, that isn't, or Stanford, for example, its turnover is about 6.5 times our turnover. So it's not a lot of money. So we are doing incredibly well considering the amount of money we've got, a mere 3/4 of a billion. But where we are very, very strong is how international we are. The average for the top 20 is about 22% international, but we are 40% international. So if you ask what is pulling us up, given that we have, relative to these other big universities, not that much money, well, it's the quality of the international students and the student body in the large, and the quality of the international staff and the staff in the large. The other thing that is interesting about us, if you look at the numbers, is that 2,500 come from North America. That is very unusual in the UK, because the United States easily has the best university system in the world. They dominate the world top 100. But very many US students who could go to Harvard or Yale or Cornell or Stanford choose to come here because of our reputation, because of the historical links. And here's a very important point, because it's one I have to make in different settings, because of the quality of the 4-year degree. The 4-year degree, as we see it in the United States and Canada, has recently been adopted by some leading universities in Asia, such as the National University of Singapore, and Delhi, and in Australia. That 4-year degree, that represents a gold standard. It represents a degree that if you're in the United States as a very talented young person, the choice between the English 3-year degree and the Scottish 4-year degree, particularly the Scottish 4-year degree in an environment like Edinburgh, it's the 4-year degree that you want. It makes sense. You've got the 2 years more general work, the 2 years of highly specialised work, where the 4th year is essentially, for most students now, has a genuine research component. So that puts us in a very strong position. And that very strong position can be seen in the applications. If you look at Appendix 1, our applications for the first time for the undergraduate programme topped 50,000. That's an awful lot of applications. We are in a situation where for all our programmes we have healthy demand. We left clearing a number of years ago, have had no reason to even think about going back into clearing. And that depends on our reputation. It also depends on our bursaries. We're very proud to be able to say that we offer the best bursaries in Britain. We had a real challenge when rest of the United Kingdom fees were introduced here in response to the introduction of the mostly £9,000 fee in England. Our strategic objective was not to distort the pattern of students coming to us from England, Wales and Northern Ireland. And I'm very happy to say we've achieved that. We didn't want masses more coming because we were perceived as cheap and cheerful. We didn't want a lot of them staying away all of a sudden because we were perceived as over-expensive. So in terms of the 3 bears, we're definitely mummy bears, the middle bowl of porridge that we wanted. We couldn't push to one end or the other. And that was quite a hard objective. Right? We worked very hard and we achieved that. And I'm very proud of the fact that in my time as principal, we've twice now had distortions in the application processes because we have this neighbour that is more than 10 times bigger than us. And when it changes its fee regime, that has an impact on us. So when they introduced the £3,000 fee in England, that obviously had an impact. And when they introduced the £9,000 fee, that had an impact. And what we tried to do, which we succeeded in doing, was keep our own pattern of relationship with England, Wales and Northern Ireland stable. And so that is very satisfactory. And if you look at our pattern of students now, you can think of it as thirds. The very big third is international students, it's actually 40%. The quite big third is Scottish, and the small third, which is actually near a quarter, is rest of the United Kingdom. But we've wanted that sort of stability. So those are the appendices. If you look at the next, you'll get 2 pages of appointments, very many chairs. It looks like an awful lot of professors. Can we afford them all? And obviously one has to pause a little bit, but we can. The externals we've appointed are immensely distinguished. The personal chairs offer are people who have done fabulously well. I'd particularly draw your attention to Professor Fawcett, who received a personal chair of student learning in the area of nurse education. It's a new category of chair. And Tonks Fawcett, as she's known by the nursing students, is held in tremendous regard for the quality and determination of her teaching and her influence on the nursing curriculum. Our nursing is ranked as easily, our nursing education is ranked as easily the best in the United Kingdom. So we're very pleased that we're partly able to recognise that by giving Professor Fawcett chair. What you don't see listed on that page is about 250 early career fellows. So that should encourage you, because most of these professors are older. It's it is a term of commendation or surprise in the university. Professor before they were 40. Well, a lot are very good, but they mostly are older than 40. But at the same time, we have 250 early career fellows of astonishing quality that we have brought in, partly with a very successful partnership with the Scottish Government. We agreed to set up a global excellence initiative, and the Scottish Government have been giving us an extra $5 million a year, which is matched by our own funds and is invested entirely in early career, really talented early career staff from around the world. Because it's very important not just to get the people who are distinguished already. In fact, it's even more important to get the people who will become distinguished and get them as part of our system. So we're working hard there. Indeed. And if you look at the number of staff we've almost got 13,000 staff. So the university as a whole, it's quite a bit bigger than Elgin. If you take it with the students, it's a community of 45,000 on 7 main locations, 6 in the city of Edinburgh and 1 in Midlothian. So big community. If you look at the awards and achievements, obviously the top one is Peter Higgs. In the time period, this report, Peter was made Companion of Honour, a very high honour indeed. He subsequently got the Nobel Prize. The excitement in the university was quite palpable. Everybody. It was also very demanding, because I was escorting the Princess Royal while she was opening facilities at Little France on the morning. And the Nobel committees, by the way, it's a real thing. They could change it. They could, one doesn't actually know what they're going to decide until they've decided. And the moment they've decided, they get on the phone. So with one part of my head was engaged with the Princess Royal and Joe Rowling and opening the wonderful centre, and the other half was glimpsing down at my mobile phone to see, has the news come out yet? It, in fact, didn't come when we were at Little France. It came when we were at the Edinburgh Centre for Carbon Innovation. And I carried Peter's briefcase, went with him to Stockholm for the Nobel ceremony. Quite an extraordinary ceremony, but the thing you need to know is that there were 12 lectures from the different Nobel laureates. Peter's was, by universal consent, the best. And Peter's achievement in terms of the contribution to science and his personal standing means he's the sort of Nobel laureate that other Nobel Prize winners queue up to get the signature. Right? So in that extraordinary melee in Stockholm with everybody in white tie and tails and such, it was, Peter was the star turn. And at the extraordinary banquet for 1300 with the King and Queen of Sweden and all the present and past Nobel Prize winners and a few hangers-on like myself and some ministers. It was Peter who was conducted by 2 Scandinavian women who seemed to me about 7 foot tall, but they were probably only 6 foot tall, but to some high podium where he gave a little speech beautifully delivered on behalf of all the Nobel laureates. It was very, very deeply impressive, deeply moving too, I have to say. And very, very pleased that in the same round of honours, Alan Walker was made MBE. Alan has just senior lecturer in physics, has just played a blinder in supporting Peter and in ensuring that in things like science festivals and museum exhibits, Peter's achievements are understandable. If you are in London, I would encourage you to go to the Science Museum, where they have built, what you really should do, of course, is go to CERN and visit the actual Large Hadron Collider. But if you can't be bothered with going to Brussels, at least go to Kensington, because there is a fabulous exhibit of very high quality, and the copies of the tunnels and such are extremely. I've been twice to the actual Large Hadron Collider, but the copies they've constructed in Kensington, and of course Alan Walker was the sort of main quality assurance to make sure that they got what Peter had done and what had been done experimentally right. So delighted with Alan's award. Really delighted with the quality of Chancellor's Awards for distinction, Principals Medals for those who have given massively to the community, the teaching awards from the Students' Association, very, very important, have a great impact there. Fellowships from the Royal Society of the British Academy, again, a fabulous year for the university, 22 different fellowships are recorded there. And as I'll say more about in a moment, also many students in Edinburgh College of Art winning prizes. If you look at the honorary graduates, tremendous distinction. Shouldn't single anybody out, but I'll single out Bill Clinton. He speaks incredibly well. Since we awarded him an honorary degree, I've visited the headquarters of the Clinton Global Initiative. He and his wife and daughter spearhead an absolutely wonderful set of initiatives, particularly focused on poverty in Africa. And we've become a partner in that endeavour in terms of planning, in terms of execution. So we're delighted. And I was really quite astonished at talking to Bill Clinton, the detailed understanding he had of our 4 global academies and the speed with which a warm welcome to join the Clinton Global Initiative came. And you'll see Pele there, part of our celebrations of being the most successful British university in the Olympics, and Eddie Reader. I'd also draw your attention to that wonderful Scottish musician. I was delighted we could honour. I'd also draw your attention to the benefactor, Steve Shirley, and in fact we will be opening the Autism Lab. The Chancellor will be opening the lab that Steve has funded. And the point I would remind you of, which I think is very healthy, is we distinguish between those who have done wonderful things academically or that are cognate to the university's goals and award them honorary degrees, which are awarded by the Senate, from people who have given substantial financial support, who are awarded benefactor status by the university court. And I think that's a very, very good positive distinction. In the News in Brief section, again continuing our move from the back, I would highlight the 3 Athena Swan Awards to the vets, to the biology, to the university as a whole. We're working very hard to improve the position of female colleagues in science. I'd highlight the launch of the Academy of Government, Launch Ed, that we're doing tremendous work for student entrepreneurs. And we have a track record with 35 to 40 new companies a year, which is comparable to the best in the world. Highlight our Changing World lecture series. That is an organised course for the first-year undergraduates that want it, but also very distinguished people giving public lectures, one of whom was the UN Commissioner for Human Rights, Mary Robinson. And highlight the national... We're now in charge of chickens. We have the national... we're in charge of chickens in both senses. Of sick chickens, we have a facility that looks up, and growing chickens to be maximally useful for the dinner table. And I now know something which I'm sure you probably all know, but how many chickens do you think there are on the planet? Well, There are a lot, exactly. There are an awful lot. There are about 11 times more chickens than there are people, because actually chickens is, in terms of animal protein, it's chickens. You know, beef and lamb and such, these are relatively rare. Chickens are not. So to be, as it were, this major centre of research in A, rearing chickens to be most useful for cooking, and B, ensuring that sick chickens don't infect us through things like bird flu. So we're in charge of chickens in both their cooking and their disease aspects. And then, obviously, in the news in brief, the Princess Royal opening the Muir Maxwell Epilepsy Centre. We've got a new thing that Ian and his colleagues have introduced, a couple of pages of community orientation. They're absolutely excellent. They're just nice pictures, nice little vignettes, and they show you, I think, something that really characterises our university is, which goes right back to our foundation in the 16th century, the deep engagement with the community. And we now see 2,000 students volunteering to work in the community through the USA one, but lots of other activity. And it's very interesting to look at faculty and look at students and see, as well as their personal distinctions, to see what it is they do for Edinburgh or for South East Scotland. We've got a very nice article on the Innovative Learning Week, and the Our Changing World lectures and Innovative Learning Week were two innovations. I have to tell you, the Senate paused on each one. The first time each was proposed to the Senate said this looks a bit radical. We went back with revised proposals, and on the second time of asking, the Senate approved each. Innovative Learning Week has been brilliant. It's, you know, the students, as it says here, do Uruguayan poetry, soapbox car races, mathematics and magic tricks. The engineers go out and work on an actual physical steam railway. The art students go to Japanese tea ceremonies. There's an incredibly heterogeneous range, but they require a lot of student autonomy, a lot of creativity, and it's essentially, Innovative Learning Week has now turned into a three-way partnership between the staff, who ask themselves the question, what is there that could be done that is not in the normal curriculum that might enhance the learning experience? The students ask the question, what might we do, what might we throw our enthusiasm into, where might we travel to? And then lots of local, distinguished people, lots of important local organisations, they have been enthused. And so if you look at a lot of, you know, the different things in Innovative Learning Week, it's a triangle. It's the students working with the staff, working with local partners, and it is just brilliant. Something else that is just brilliant is the work on broadband for the Highlands. If you look at sort of standard provision of high-speed broadband in countries like Scotland, that is to say countries that have got mountainous bits and islands, you will find that the regular authorities are really, they just sort of give up when it gets to the difficult bits at the edges. And they'll give you some comforting figure. They will say they will say something like 90% of the population has high-speed broadband. What they won't tell you is 100% of the population on this or that island, or in this or that valley next to this or that mountain, has no broadband worth talking about at all. So our colleagues in informatics got frustrated with this. Professor Buneman, who interestingly is not an engineer, his international reputation is in terms of databases, but he stays on a little island near Skye, and he thought, well, let's try and do something. And so it's sort of like almost like guerrilla warfare. He recruited local people. They started doing things by eye. They started attaching little antenna and boosters to things. Occasionally, people who were a bit nervous, they thought, you know, the radio waves might get in their heads and upset them, so antennae don't have to be moved again. So all sorts of, and did sort of extraordinary things, rowing about in boats all around Loch Horn. And they built a really effective, so that now if you're on Skye, you actually probably have better broadband than most of you in this room. And I went to the official opening, which was held in our partner Sauna Ostag, the Gaelic College on Skye. And it was almost like a religious revival ceremony. You know, the amount of enthusiasm And, you know, the Sky-based grandparents talking about interacting with their grandchildren in New Zealand via Skype. And the Sky-based, you know, mid-20s talking about keeping up a professional career in the finance industry while, again, living on Sky. And we had, as it were, delegations from the Lake District and from Cornwall who'd come to Skye to see how you'd do it if you just decided to stop waiting for the government and BT and do it. And it's been, because Professor Buneman is very pedantic, proper academic, it has been all documented. There are papers about it, so that if you are trying to do it in Cumbria or in the tip of Cornwall, well, there's a master plan for it. So something I'm immensely proud of. And of course, we had a very positive relationship with Saun Austeg and Skye before, but clearly, and it was, you know, on the term, and in terms of the original experimental thing, we succeeded in bringing the highest possible broadband to 1,000 people living in 12 different highly dispersed communities. And now that, you know, the university has shown how to do it, the Scottish Government is looking at that and looking at that as a template. Then, as you move on, you find Professor Sandercock's work on stroke. And like quite a number of our projects, the reason this has world impact, which it does, it's been written up about all the world, is because it is done on a proper scale. This is an 11-year project involving 3,000 stroke victims, looking at whether a particular clot-busting agent, RTPA, would aid, how it would aid recovery, and coming up with a very conclusive result, which means that if you are a medic and you encounter somebody who's just had a stroke, then Edinburgh Research tells you what to do with that clotting agent. So it's something we can be immensely proud of, but part of the impact is because of the scale. We've got a very nice spread on the Global Justice Academy, building on the success of our other 3 academies. Professor Christine Bell, Professor of Constitutional Law, leading that. All sorts of things. An immediate impact was that the Global Citizenship Commission, which is looking at revising for the current time the 1948 UN Declaration of Human Rights, that met in Edinburgh. The Carnegie Commission very kindly gave money for the commission to meet here. And when we were negotiating it, I suggested that at least one of its meetings might be in public. They were nervous, and I think the reason they were nervous is they didn't think they could fill the McEwan Hall. I was quite sure that, given the nature of the people in Edinburgh, that if they were told the Global Human Rights Commission was meeting in the McEwan Hall, they would fill it, and they did. And it was and Malala was given an honorary degree at that, and it had immense impact particularly for the Academy of Government, but also for the work of the Commission and for the university. There's some very nice articles about the workplace experience for postgraduates, making the most of the masters. Excellent scheme. And these have been very difficult times for graduates, but your university, all our graduates are doing extremely well, with very good roots. And making the most of the masters was a way of looking systematically at different types of internships, for which we won awards. And then there's impact. In general, I don't like these contrived acronyms. So this is obviously a contrived acronym. Impact, it stands for Implantable Microsystems for Personalized Anti-Cancer Therapy. But it does build on 2 great strengths of the university. It builds on our understanding of cancer, but it also builds on our understanding of tiny computers, very, very tiny computers that can emit signals. So what the research consists of is placing very, very small computers, because that's what these implants are, on the top of cancerous tumours. As the cancerous tumour changes, and so it may not change, it sends signals so that the radiographer knows exactly where to look. But it also sends signals about the rate of change of the tumour, so that the oncologist might say, well, in that case, we should really do nothing but wait 3 months. Or the oncologist could say, well, just look at these signals we've had from the little computer that's physically on top of the tumour. We've really got to get the laser surgery going today, right away. So it's something that bodes great promise. It's 5.6 million money of support, but it's interesting to me because it combines stuff that I know about, the microcomputers that send signals, with stuff that the very strong oncology in the university knows about. And for me, one interesting aspect of that grant was we were told we had to build a MOOC, a massive open online course based on it. So I'll talk about MOOCs in a moment, but I was interested to see that in a major grant it was actually strengthened by having a public understanding aspect. As you go through the document, the next thing you find is the Edinburgh College of Art Awards. And these are quite extraordinary. It starts off by telling you about Will Anderson and Ainsley Henderson, who won a BAFTA for the making of The Longbird. That's a film they made while they were students here. They also won 19 other awards. So they've won a BAFTA and 19 other awards at film festivals around the world. So that's 20 awards. It's not bad going. Lawrence Smith, who's very photogenic, fourth-year undergraduate, won the Gold Award at the Graduate Fashion Week. And people were writing about her in things like the New York Times. And at the same Graduate Fashion Week, Liam Ross and Chalupi Sean Douglas and Olivia Craber won Best Menswear. And then we had a number of runners-up. So that, for the fashion students, tremendous. The Venice Biennale had Liam Ross and Chalupi there. And Owen Normand was in 2013 the BP Young Artist of the Year, something I regularly go and visit in London. And that's a very, very, very high quality competition, very demanding. Wonderful that one of our students. So Edinburgh College of Art, the students getting tremendous work. And this is, you know, the recognition I'm listing to you here is not Scottish recognition or European recognition. This is worldwide recognition. These students, I was almost going to call them kids, mustn't do that. These students are set on fabulous careers. Now the MOOCs, you've got an article about the massive open online courses. MOOCs, open educational resources, the technology invented in MIT for about 8 years, didn't go anywhere. Stanford then, about 2.5 years ago, built the first MOOC that was successful. Pretty much exactly 2 years ago, as we noticed it was successful, I was on study leave at Stanford, which is a place I'm closely connected to, saw this, thought this was a good thing. So we came back and we launched 6 MOOCs, Introduction to Philosophy, our most successful MOOC, 100,000 learners, Astrobiology and the Search for Extraterrestrial Life, a MOOC on e-learning, a MOOC on critical thinking and global challenges, building on that wonderful first-year course, a MOOC on artificial intelligence planning, and then in that round, our least successful MOOC, equine nutrition. And this is equine nutrition is not a course for people making burgers, working for any of the supermarket chains. It's about what you should feed your horse. And equine nutrition only had 22,500 students, but it's had the best completion and the best retention of any MOOC in the world to date. And we think, including the chief vet in the British military, and we think the reason it had such good completion is because all the students who took it were sincere, in the sense that they had a horse. So this wasn't some dilettante interest in barley and oats. These were people who were seriously interested in what to feed their horse. Why are we doing this? Well, in the case of equine nutrition, of course, as in the case of a number of others, there is a partner course, an online master's, which is a big full-credit course, which you might take over 2 years, on equine health. So the MOOCs have helped us with reputation. They've helped us with access to our masters, and they've helped us with reach. And you'll see on the facing page there a picture of me with Daniel Bergman. I think we were a bit surprised by the different types of reach. Daniel is an incredibly bright 17-year-old autistic young man who couldn't be educated in any conventional environment. There'd be no possibility of doing that. He studied our Introduction to Philosophy MOOC. He studied our Critical Thinking and World Challenges MOOC. He was very successful in both. He was on a holiday with his parents in Switzerland, and they suddenly thought, gosh, we're next door to Scotland, pretty much. And I guess if you come from the United States, you know, Geneva does look pretty much next door to Edinburgh. So they popped on an aeroplane to come and meet. And it was, I have to say, one of the high points of my career was going past the portrait that you'll go past of David Hume on the Playfair stairs. And Daniel was immediately pecking out on his iPad Skeptical Inquiry. He got very excited when he saw the picture of David Hume, which of course he'd recognised from his course. So there have been an enormous success. We're engaged in the second wave of MOOCs. The second wave includes, I don't know, this is a very genteel audience, so I should maybe be careful. We've got a MOOC which I anticipate will do very well because of its title. The MOOC is in partnership with the Tate Modern. It is about the work of Andy Warhol, and it's called Sex, Drugs and Death. But it is a very serious MOOC, obviously, about modern art and certain movements and painting, soup tins and things. So we've got that MOOC, which is a very nice partnership. We've also got a MOOC which has attracted a lot of press attention, and it's the only MOOC I feature in. Again, I feature as a spear carrier. As the MOOC starts, you see me and Peter Higgs in front of the wonderful portrait that Victoria Crowe did of Peter in the Royal Society of Edinburgh, and I say something stupid to Peter, like, well, Peter, so when did you first predict the Higgs boson? And then I vanish from the MOOC, and you move on to the high ground of modern particle physics. But it's so that is going very well, and I'm discussing with Vice Principal Hayward. And over lunch, I would welcome suggestions for the appropriate celebration when we reach our millionth MOOC learner, which it's quite clear we will now. Last time I looked, we were over 700,000 learners, and so we are heading towards 1 million. And I'm not sure what the appropriate celebration should be. And given the way the technology works, we'll be able to identify with accuracy who the millionth is, because we have all those key presses, so we'll know the millionth when they arrive. So how should we greet them? So in conclusion, it's been a truly wonderful year for the university, as the convener said. I mean, it's just quite extraordinary. The pinnacle of individual achievement has obviously been Peter Higgs. Probably the pinnacle of collective achievement has been reaching an audience that is now over 700,000 in more than 200 countries through the MOOCs, but lots there. I really want to acknowledge the students and colleagues who've contributed to those extraordinary achievements. And really, again, as ever, I want to thank the General Council for your support. The support we get from the General Council assessors on court, absolutely invaluable, and really very, very appreciative of that. The Business Committee and the other General Council committees think very hard, give us very important advice. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the company going in on days like this as we process in the open air on a Sunday to St Giles, where I have to say, maybe, I don't know if whether the General Council needs a strapline, like older and tougher, but it is noticeable to me that the General Council members are more likely to turn out and go down the Royal Mile in February in the rain than other folks. But anyway, in conclusion, thank you very much.
We now have the opportunity for questions and comments on the principal's introduction of the report. If you can wait for the microphone to get to you before you start speaking, that's really helpful. The floor is open.
Ian Sutherland, former member of the Business Committee. Two points regarding international aspects. One, I don't want to be carping, but at the same time, is there a robust assessment of the cost effectiveness of the offices that the university has set up overseas? The second one is really a cause of concern that has been raised in the papers, and I think a concern to several of us. That is the setting up of an American fraternity house associated with this university. The image of these is, to put it mildly, not good and could be very detrimental to the reputation of this university. And I'd be grateful to hear the Principal's views on that.
Very good. Two very topical questions. We're just completing a review of our Beijing office. And to remind you, our first office was opened in Beijing, second one in Mumbai, third one in Sao Paulo, and we're in the process of opening a fourth office in the Rockefeller Center in New York. So we are formally evaluating them to see if they are value for money. If I look at the office in Beijing, we have one of the best Confucius Institutes in the world located here. We have 2 joint research centers with Peking University, one located here and one located on the Peking University campus there. We have a range of high-quality partnerships with very high-quality Chinese universities. Obviously, Peking University itself, especially in the humanities, but Fudan in medicine, Xiamen in business, Nankai in mathematics, Xi'an in robotics. And these are all great assets for the university, on top of the around 2,000 students we get from the People's Republic of China. So certainly from where I'm sitting, they look like good value for money, but we are making a point of formally evaluating them, and we have, I think we're just completing the evaluation of the Peking office. On the second point, nobody has asked the university to recognize a fraternity, and if any group were to ask us that, we would consult straight away with the Students' Association and with other parties. I don't know whether the Students' Association has been asked to recognize. We cannot stop our students joining self-organized groups. My understanding is that it's certainly in the United States, which is where fraternity houses come from, that they require, usually as part of their constitution, the formal endorsement of the university. And I can assure you that nobody has approached us, and if they did, we would evaluate the reputational standard of any such very carefully, and we would talk to other universities that had already recognized them. But we are in a funny position with these news items in that, as far as I'm aware, nobody has, well, they've definitely not approached the university, and I don't think they've approached the Students' Association either. So I don't actually know what's going on there, because from my experience of the United States, which is 2 universities where there are a lot of fraternities, University of Texas at Austin and Stanford, you don't get to have a university chapter without the university agreeing, and university presidents routinely shut chapters when they do things that don't fit with the university's culture or ethos. And of course, our university has an extremely strong dignity and respect policy.
Do you want to respond to that, or are you happy with that? Can I take an online question and then we'll come to you?
The first inquiry is about privatisation of the student loan book from 2 graduates, Adam Ramsey from 2008 and Mike Williamson, 2011. They'd like to ask what has been done to try to prevent the privatisation of the student loan book and to ensure the protection of the terms of repayment of student loans.
Okay, so on issues like this privatisation, the way we work is very much in partnership with the organisation, the representative organisations. So for us, in relation to this particular issue, the key partner organisation is Universities UK, which speaks for all British universities, but all the other partner organisations are Universities Scotland, and obviously the Russell Group has quite a lot of status, which is the the leading 24 research universities. So reservations have been expressed, but it's, as you will understand, the University of Edinburgh either on its own or in partnership with other universities, doesn't have much control of the working of the Westminster government.
Question here.
Thank you. Frank Stewart. Could I thank the Principal for his characteristically clear, broad-ranging and far-sighted report, which is very encouraging, and refer to what he rather modestly described as one of the boring parts of the report, namely Appendix 2, looking at the list of top 20 non-UK domicile on entry. We notice that the vast majority of these students are coming from either developed or what are generally called emerging countries. And I wonder if we could invite the Principal to say a little about the involvement of the university in teaching and research relevant to what are generally referred to as third world or developing countries.
Yes, that's a very good question. I mean, the university historically had a really strong relationship with Africa. And that was really started in the mid-19th century. We were actually the initiator of the Association for Commonwealth Universities, which for many African universities is their main route into connection with universities around the world. When the Thatcher Conservative government changed the policy on student scholarships, there was suddenly, for all British universities, a dramatic reduction in the number of students coming from Africa. We are now working very hard to rebuild our connections. There's a big effort in the Centre for African Studies. It particularly is aligned with the work of the global academies. So, for example, the Global Health Academy works with universities like Makerere University, like KwaZulu-Natal University. At the Global Environment Academy has particular links with areas of Latin America, as well as some areas in Africa. And the Global Development Academy has links with Sub-Saharan Africa and some of the parts of Asia that are under more demand. So it is an issue for us of great importance. We feel a moral obligation to address world challenges, and some of the world challenges are in their sharpest form there. Also, for the long term, one tries to do the work as symmetrically as possible. So if you look, for example, at, we now get funding from the Gates Foundation. The Gates Foundation insists that the work is symmetric. That is to say, we must work with, working on TB in Africa, we have to work with, which is entirely correct, we want to, with partner universities in Africa, working together. So it is an important part of the agenda. You're quite right to point it out. And you're quite right to observe that there are parts of the world where we really need to think, I would be particularly pleased for us to get more scholarship money that can be targeted against some of the Latin American countries and some of the African countries where there isn't sufficient resource. It's a very good question, and a key part of the university's agenda.
Okay, if I can take another online question, and then we'll come down here.
Lewis White, a psychology graduate 2013, asks, given the trend in recent years and months throughout the not-for-profit sectors towards ethical investments, could the university provide justification for their continued investment in the fossil fuel industry?
Thank you very much for that question. The university has an ethical investment strategy, which we take very seriously. We're the first university in Europe to sign up for the United Nations-supported Principles for Responsible Investment. We are now engaged in a broad-ranging consultation, which will close on the 7th of March. So I would encourage anybody, including any alumni, to participate in this. And obviously the final responsibility for decisions on investment remains with the University Court. The Investment Committee, which has composed of people who have very distinguished personal records in the investment industry. They will have a view on how things can be optimized from a financial point of view. From our participation in the Principles for Responsible Investment, we will also have a view about what we should do best from an ethical point of view, and there will be some tension there. But we will do it systematically. We are committed to it, and we do have a public consultation, which I would encourage Mr. White to participate in.
Okay, thank you. We can take a question here.
Alison Fuller, BSc Botany of 1967. Thank you for your address, sir. I noted that you said that the students coming in from North America particularly were one of the factors in leading them to come to Scotland was the length of the course, 4 years rather than 3. I mentioned my own date of graduation because it seems to me that that was not such an attractive thing in those days, ancient history. But I wondered, has any comparison been noticed informally or any study done comparing the attitude of British, UK students to length of degree in Scotland rather than England, their view compared with the ones from abroad who come because of the attractiveness of the longer study time?
Very good question, and certainly there has often been a supposition that the 4-year degree would be less attractive than the English 3-year degree. But what we're seeing is, your university's now got more than 50,000 applications for our 4-year degree, which puts us in application numbers in a massively stronger position than Oxford or Cambridge with their 3-year degree. So it does seem highly popular. We have always offered a route into year 2. And the assumption was that students who came in with A-levels or advanced standing might want to go straight into year 2 and save themselves that year. If you look at the data, what you see is that increasingly over time is that students who could skip the first year don't. So what we're seeing is the students sort of voting with their feet. So even if they come and could go straight into year 2, they don't. In larger and larger proportion, they enter year 1 because they do want the benefits of the traditional broad-based. And we see very distinguished universities around the world, like the National University of Singapore or Delhi, Melbourne, moving to our model. So I would feel quite comfortable there with that position. And occasionally, one sees the extreme form of experiment would be, for example, the University of Buckingham, which is Britain's only, well, it was until recently, Britain's only private university. It pioneered the 2-year degree. Over basically no vacation to 2 years of 4 semesters. The University of Buckingham has got about, if you looked at its student body, it would be maybe, well, I'm just trying to do something in my head. Maybe about 6 or 7% of the number of applications we get. It was created, it's not. And you don't see lots of students rushing in, oh gosh, a 2-year degree. My strong sense is that students want a high-quality degree and a high-quality experience, and increasingly they're seeing that the 4-year degree gives you more of an opportunity to that. I mean, that's, all the indicators out there are that way round. When I'm in places like the Russell Group, because I'm very respectful to you, I'm not that respectful to the heads of my competitor institutions, so I tease them for their impoverished short degree. And they used to rebut me more robustly than they do nowadays.
Can I take another online question, and then we'll come here and then here.
I apologise for the pronunciation of this lady's name. Lisa Kaladji, I think it is, MSc Social Research 2013, currently a PhD student. She says the university has recently been faced with ongoing industrial action from academic and teaching staff relating to disparity between tuition fees, executive administrator salaries and ongoing real-term decreases in academic staff members and teaching assistants' pay. What action does the university plan to take to restore fair compensation for academic staff and to bring teaching assistant pay into compliance with minimum legal wage regulations?
Okay. I'll make a short answer and I'll make a long answer. The short answer is we believe what we're doing is fair. There certainly isn't a disparity. For example, executive administrator salaries and teaching staff salaries are in line. We don't have one rising above the other, and we're certainly in comfortable compliance with the minimum legal wage regulations. So there are three things in the question which I think are incorrect. It's very important for us that the compensation of employees is fair. We have implemented a pay award, which is part of a strong overall compensation package. We've got excellent conditions of service, defined benefit pensions, provision for incremental, and do remember an awful lot of staff are on incremental grades where they receive a pay rise in addition to the National Pay Award, as well as contribution-related pay increases. Increased cost of living have had an impact, but university pay and benefits package continues to compare favourably with other organisations. And I have to say, if you look at the number of highly qualified people who want to join us in any of the categories that we advertise, that's the case. As far as the minimum legal wage regulations go, everybody, including teaching assistants, are paid salaries significantly higher than those required by these regulations.
Hi, Matthew McPherson, Business Committee member and 2011 graduation. I think thanks very much, Principal, for a terrific talk. I think that the answer you gave to a previous question about the importance of the Edinburgh experience and the student experience is one which has been of great influence over the last couple of years, particularly. But I want to really draw people's attention to the different experience of different types of students who are at the university. And obviously the biggest and most notable shift in that has been the growth of international students, which you touched upon at the beginning of your talk. And you mentioned that it's gone from 19% at the end of the 20th century to 40% international students now. You, of course, highlighted that there are great opportunities to this growth, but there are obviously also challenges as well. And I was wondering, firstly, on sustainability, for how much longer does the university expect or forecast its growth in the international student community? Secondly, what's the university doing to ensure that there are appropriate student services, including housing and infrastructure, to assist and support students while they're here? And thirdly, what consideration has the university given to how this may affect us internationally in regards to our reputation over the next 50 or 100 years to come? The university that's represented by, members here today is very different to the university that will be represented by members in 50 years' time. And I was wondering what consideration the Principal could give to that. Thank you.
Very good. Three very good questions. I would anticipate that the growth will continue in a steady way, and I would think it highly appropriate if the university ended up being genuinely 50% international. I think you're entirely right. This raises issues about services. This raises issues about accommodation. At the moment, we're building accommodation for about 1,200 at Holyrood. Wonderful new development there. If you like cranes and big holes, do walk down to Murray House. You go past a lot of cranes and big holes. And then Deaconess House, which had a previous life in the NHS, is now going to be turned into beautiful accommodation for another 350. And we have engaged in a number of partnerships. So, for example, the Festival Theatre has built at its back rehearsal space, but after that, if you're wondering what is the next great, there's two big blocks being finished there, that is student accommodation. They will run it, they will get an income stream from it, we will give them advice to ensure that it's up to fit. So for actual accommodation, it's important, and we've got a lot on the go. The University Secretary, Sarah Smith, is very much, she will be going to the planning round pointing out very robustly and correctly that as the numbers of students increase and as they come from different parts of the world, that means we need more counselling services, we need more career services, we need more support. There's a lot of generic support that students need, and that has got to increase in proportion. And we see, for example, different parts of the university, including USA now, having officers, employing officers with a specialised remit internationally. In terms of our reputation, my firm view is that this is one of the key reasons, this move, why our reputation is rising. If you look, for example, the Chinese colleague who discovered the SARS virus did his doctoral work with us. The students that we attract from around the world are of an astonishingly high quality. They are ones where we can be really, really confident in their future success. And they will remain connected to us. And they will do research with us, and they will publish with us. The Royal Society of London did a very interesting study on the impact of publications. And it found that a publication, on average, would have at least 50% more world impact if the authors were from more than one country. And of course, if you train a student here, they go back to their home country, and you continue to work with them, then they bring into the write-up what they've learnt in their home country, you add it. So I think in terms of reputation, it is unbeatable. And if you wanted me to identify a single long-term reason for our rise in these different world rankings, I would say it's because we are manifestly becoming a global university. The other thing this does, of course, is it makes it increasingly easier for us to ensure that our home students spend time abroad. Because part of the Edinburgh offer has to be to spend that semester or that year in Beijing or in Los Angeles or in Berlin or in Moscow. So I think we can still go some distance. I would like us to go some distance in the proportion. I think there is an inevitable pressure on services of the type you mentioned, and we'll have to invest in them. It's absolutely clear and absolutely straightforward, because the income is there to invest in. And I think in reputational terms, it will just help us.
Okay.
Thank you. Richie Walker, BSc Business Committee member, 1968 graduation. Thank you, Principal. You've actually alluded to my question in your report, but I wonder if I could just tease out a little the university's position on the item carried in the recent Graduate Association Journal on women in science at the university. Excuse me. Now, it refers to the absence of maternity cover for female academics, both lecturers and research group leaders. And I wonder if the university's been able to review the situation and is perhaps taking steps to improve it. Thank you.
It's a very good question, and it's one that concerns us. Now, we need to be clear on the issue. From this point of view, there are two sorts of female staff. There are staff who are on mainstream university contracts. They have maternity cover. So it's not female staff in general. It's female staff who are based with us, but essentially have another main employer. So these are female staff who are primarily paid from a research council grant or from some other agencies that do not have maternity cover. And we have an issue there, and which we must resolve. The first step, obviously, is to say to the agency, if you pay, for 3 years for this, senior female colleague to work in genomics, and she becomes pregnant, then you should provide with maternity cover, and they will. From experience, we know that some of them will say, "No, here's the sum of money. This is the research we want done. You sort it." And it may be that we will just have to identify funds. This would not be a small issue. We have 2,000 staff who are male and female who are paid on research contracts. So we may have to bite the bullet. It is under active review. It's a key issue. But you know, where the university is, as it were, the long-term employer, that's fine. We behave properly. The issue is where we're employing people directly and solely on the resources provided by another agency.
Should we take another online question?
Perhaps I'll squeeze in two at the same time, if you don't mind. One from Ian Sanderson, BSc 1957. If two applicants are under consideration for the last available place on a degree course, both have identical qualifications, both are male, white and the same age, one from a state school and the other from a public school, who gets the place? And perhaps another simple answer, perhaps from Mr. Keddy Law, geography graduate 1968. Recently, Cambridge University announced it's raising its entrance requirements for a number of science subjects, including medicine. In light of there being around 10 applicants for each place at Edinburgh, is there any likelihood of our university raising its entry tariffs, currently below those of St Andrews, in the near future?
I have two very good questions. In relation to... So two very good questions. In relation to the entry standards one, we have a lot of applicants. We have more applicants than Oxford plus Cambridge doubled, so we have lots. We don't think it is a good idea to impose rationing, as it were, by raising the bar. Our view is the right entry standard. And remember, and the thing to understand is the entry standard that a university has is the minimum. It's what you have to have. We think to have the entry standard dramatically above what is necessary is an odd thing to do. We think that basically what we should do is have an entry standard that is appropriate, and it's very, very rare for us to offer the entry standard because of the volume of applicants. We don't usually do that, but we think that if we wanted to, we should be able to do that, and if there is context around a candidate that they wish to present, then having an appropriate entry standard is right. Leads me to the second question. There is no discrimination in terms of the fee basis of the school that people apply for. So if we had two candidates, who are peas in a pod from an independent school and a state school, then the people doing admissions would have great difficulty. They would have to look for a differentiator, but the fee status of the school would not be available as a possible differentiator. There are other possible differentiators. There are, maybe a teacher has written about tremendous promise. The student may be coming from a background that is impoverished in some ways. Of course, I would remind you that students from impoverished backgrounds often go to independent schools on things like foundation scholarships. And also remind the questioner that there are plenty of state schools whose record of getting into high-quality universities is better than some of the independent schools, actually. So you couldn't. So it is. But the simple answer would be one could not differentiate on the financial basis on which the school is being run. It's very much focused on the personal circumstances, aspirations, talents, and skills of the applicant.
Okay, can I come here and then?
Hi, I'm David Houston. I got a PhD in theoretical physics, not in particle physics, though, in 1976, and an MBA in 1987. And thank you for anyone who voted for me, because I've just been elected to the Business Committee of the General Council. Principal, thanks very much for a very interesting address. But one subject you didn't touch on, which surprised me, was the opportunity and threat of the referendum and Scottish independence. I noticed, for example, in the financial summary, that student fees went up something like 24 million between 2012 and 2013. And of course, there's the question, amongst many others, that UK students not in Scotland might actually get free university education in an independent Scotland. So have you any response? I see there was some discussion actually in the Finance and Services Standing Committee, so clearly your strategic people are looking at this.
No, I have no response. The University Court has an extremely clear policy on the referendum debate, which is that the university has no official policy. And as I guess, I'm like Dr. Conn, I'm an official university spokesperson, so obviously I have no point of view on this. Clearly, it's important to do contingency planning. The sums you are mentioning, in the context of turnover of the order of 750 million, once you're looking at, sums that are represent in that case about 4% of income, that's a very serious amount of money that would pay an awful lot of salary bills. So clearly we are doing a lot of contingency planning. Clearly we are addressing politicians directly. I was at dinner with the Cabinet Secretary. It was slightly confusing. I was at dinner with the Cabinet Secretary for Education, the Scottish one, Mike Russell, with the Russell Group in London. So the Russell Group had dinner with Mike Russell, and in various settings I have the opportunity to. I have to say the current Scottish Government is extremely accessible. So there are a tremendous number of opportunities to express opinions and anxieties. But in terms of the public expression of views, the university is quite clear. And I think that's correct. I said we're a population of 45,000. If the university were to take any line, inevitably we would generate an internal fight. The other thing is we have become a great centre for research on constitutional change, with the lion's share of resources coming from the Economic and Social Research Council to projects based in our university. If we were in some sense party pre to the outcome, then we wouldn't be seen as an independent place that could research the processes around it. So I think it's very important that a university, qua university, not have a public view.
Plenty of rustling by the sound of it. Let's hear a question at the back, then we'll take one online, and then down at the front here.
Thank you. My question was essentially the same as the last one, so I won't repeat it.
That's very good.
Which makes more time for me. Mr. Liang, a PhD graduate, 2013, currently in Taiwan. I heard from people that if a student passes the first year report but fails his or her Viva, the school will get negative points. I'm not sure whether this is truth or just a rumour. If this is true, is it possible that low-quality students will also get their PhD, even if they are not qualified, just because the school does not want to obtain negative points?
It's the case that the research councils monitor success rates, and it is the case that that process is completely disconnected from the examination process. The standard UK PhD process, of which we have a version, is very robust. It involves externals and internal colleagues who are not directly associated with the candidate. And we have a lot of confidence that you only get a doctorate on the merits. We'd be very sure of that.
Sorry, the final question here, perhaps, is from Abdul Al-Zahrani, a clinical psychologist from Jeddah, graduated 2012. It is my dream, he says, to have a chance to join you in my beloved university and city. I have a suggestion that as an alumni, we really still need an open access to the e-journals. Is it possible to discuss this with all attendants?
It's a very good question, and it relates to a sort of direction of travel. At the moment, publishers restrict access to electronic journals to current staff and students. Many of them would charge considerably more, and we get a tremendous burden from these costs if we were wider. So we have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. But very importantly, JSTOR, the Digital Library of Academic Journals books, can be accessed through the MyEd alumni portal. And more recently, electronic journals from SAGE and Project Muse are being added. And we keep on looking at ways of doing this. We are an active supporter of open access. We're increasingly publishing our own papers through open access. So we are doing our best. It is the case that for some electronic journals, the contract we have with the publisher would be onerous if we went beyond. But there's no question of the direction of travel. And so for the future, I think the questioner can look to increasingly better open access to e-journals.
Yes. Alan Brown, past convener of the Business Committee. Could I ask the Principal to come back to the thorny question of the referendum? In Appendix 4, we see that 180 million of our money comes from UK Research Council grants. Both sides of the divide claim that we will or will not have access to Research Council grants. I don't want the Principal to become political, but could he give us any sense or guidance on whether or not an independent Scotland would have access to UK research councils?
Obviously, and Dr. Brown has correctly picked out that figure of 170 million from the UK research councils. Very important source of funds, and you know, if you look at, say, high-performance computing, since 2002, we have been the site for all the 3 successive high-performance computers. We're now the site for the Wave Tank, which are all funded as UK facilities. There is no reason of principle as to why, if Scotland were an independent country, we should not have access. If you look at Scandinavia, it operates as a research union. So it's, you know, if the Norwegians have better science in some domain than the Scandinavians, then they will get the Scandinavian money. If you look at the island of Ireland, it nowadays again operates as a research union. So we understand how these could be made to work. We would make a strong case that research in England would be damaged if it was disconnected from research in Scotland, because there are things, you know, where, like high-performance computing or theoretical or experimental physics and theoretical physics, where we have leadership that helps lift the whole of the UK. And if you look at the tendencies in the European Union, you know, we look at this 79 billion of euros that is coming on stream that will be delivered through Horizon 2020, then all the big projects will involve multiple countries. So we are, for example, working on a bid for healthy ageing, which will involve 5 other EU states, including Britain, as it stands. So there's no reason in principle. The Scottish Government certainly understands the importance, and it is not the case that anyone in the Westminster Government has said that the Research Council apparatus would be dismantled. And of course, the Research Council apparatus is part of a larger apparatus. It includes the REF, the Research Evaluation Framework, which is done at the UK level. And it would be extremely unhelpful if Scotland was not part of it in the future, because it's a very important reference point. So there's no reason of principle. What would actually happen? I mean, it would depend, I suppose, in simplest terms, on how amicable and rational any split was. If a split were to happen, and if it was amicable and rational, then I don't see any reason why the current Research Council infrastructure, which works incredibly well, if you say, having just come back from Brussels, you compare how we do to any of the other continental European nations. So it would strike me as not sensible or rational to dismantle it. Also, on the other hand, if politicians were determined to dismantle it, they could.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions? I think we have one here and one here.
Thank you. Neil Hind, architecture graduate, 1969. After that previous question, this is a much lighter comment, Principal. Very interested to hear of the Innovative Learning Week, and if next year, perhaps, instead of dispatching your engineering students to the Isle of Skye, you might put them on the train to North Berwick, where at DREM, I had it tested yesterday, my broadband speed is told to be just about twice the old dial-up speed. And we could do with some improvement. Only 20 miles from this room.
All right. I certainly will raise the possibility in informatics of missionary activity in the borders.
Mike Williamson, 2011. David Willett recently announced that he would be raising the cap on student numbers. Will this have any effect on the university's admissions process?
That's a very good question. Inevitably it will. Inevitably there will be more competition. for students in England. Some universities will look at this as, as their way forward will be to dramatically build their numbers of home undergraduates. So we will have to watch. I think the particular pressure on us will be to be really expeditious, because the universities that are wanting to take advantage of the removal of the cap will also put in place processes of very rapid evaluation of applications. So the minimum it will require us to do is greatly speed up our own admissions processes.
Dr. Kinnear, Science, 1962. Can I ask a question about student experience? I notice 10% of your students are part-timers. My experience in another university is an awful lot of students nowadays, especially part-timers, do the absolute minimum amount of time in the university. They're missing out on things like extra practicals. Anything that's not assessed, they don't attend. Is this a problem in Edinburgh?
That's a very good question. I'm not aware of it as a problem. For us, the great majority of part-time students are online. We're a bit unusual in that, if you can put it this way, the conventional undergraduate program attracts very few part-time students. But you're quite right, so there is an issue, and it's certainly the case that when you look at the data, and the last time I looked at it was a long time ago, so I might be out of date, but certainly when I've looked at the data, which would be about 20 years ago, it was the case that part-time students in undergraduate programs were, as you suggest, highly instrumental. That is, they would do the minimum required to pass the examinations, and clearly that doesn't give you the full experience. But I'm not aware of any warning signals in the university, but in practical terms, our offer of part-time in the conventional undergraduate program is very, very small.
Okay, are there any further questions? If there aren't, I think we should give the principal another round of applause. Are there any further items of competent business? No. Can we then move a motion for adjournment? No objections? Yes. Then can I adjourn the meeting until we meet again? And
there is a motion.
Oh, sorry. Right.
It's a purely formal piece that I move that for the purpose of considering matters which may be transmitted to the General Council by the University Court or any other business of a competent nature, the Business Committee is empowered to act on behalf of the Council, and at this meeting be adjourned to a date to be fixed by the Business Committee.
Are we acceptable with that? Thank you. I was getting ahead of myself. Can I invite the chaplain to close the meeting with a benediction?
We ask God's blessing upon us that we may go out from here with wisdom, courage and vision, using our gifts wisely to build a just and compassionate world. Amen.
This production is brought to you by the University of Edinburgh.